What is good? What is up? It's Jordan or Texans Thoughts, and we're back with another episode today. We've got a bit of an emergency debate to be had, and we've got my friend John Crumpler, Texans Doc from the Texans Wire, joining me today to discuss the Deebo Samuel trade request and the Texans' rumored interest. John, thank you for joining me today. How you doing, my guy?
Jordan, I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for having me on. This was a little excitement I was not expecting in the Texans universe. I thought it would be a little more chill until Monday, but all the same, pretty fun. And I've been surprised watching where everyone falls on the issue of whether or not this would be a good idea for the team.
Me too. Me too. I woke up and saw this notification. So I'm Western time or Pacific time. So I'm a little bit later. So I woke up and saw this notification. I'm like, what the heck? Deebo Samuel? And then the Texans actually being interested. It was a really big shock to me. I was not expecting it whatsoever, right? Like you said. And my initial reaction was like, Deebo Samuel, a star, one of the best offensive weapons in the NFL. For just a 13th pick, like, okay, I can get behind that. But there's a lot of layers to be peeled back in this potential trade, and we're going to get into those today. Just first off, to show kind of what we're talking about, the Athletics, Tim, I'm going to mess up his name, but Tim Kawakami, I believe, is reporting that the Houston Texans are, brought up the most in this Deebo Samuel chatter in terms of being interested in them. He actually said last night on April 19th, last evening, I guess, last afternoon, it's no surprise, but I've been told a team to watch in any possible wide receiver trade talk around the draft is Houston, which holds the 3rd and 13th picks in the first round. 13th seems like the one in conversations. That, of course, would include any potential Deebo Samuel interest. So he's kind of thrown out there that the Texans are very much interested. And then he clarified today saying basically major point, I don't know if 49ers and Houston have had talks or if that would be Deebo's first choice, but there's chatter that Houston is interested. So I guess what I want to start this off by saying is that Houston's interest is definitely all rumored up until this point. The main kind of your Ian Rappaports, Adam Schefter's, those guys have said like some other teams are interested and haven't listed the Texans. So we got to take this all with a grain of salt, of course. But let's get into the hypothetical scenario of this, John, because it's really, really interesting. It's not often that a player of Deebo Samuel's caliber gets to, hit, I wouldn't say the open market per se, but is available. What is your initial reaction to this trade? Are you all for it? Are you hesitant? What are your thoughts?
My initial reaction, and I don't know if you felt this way, I was surprised that Caserio's even leaked that the Texans would be interested. This feels very kind of contrary to how they've built the team so far. They have been collecting assets, and eventually you have to cash in. But what they've kind of shown us so far in the 2022 offseason is this is not our time to go all in yet. They brought back most of their own guys. They didn't want to overspend or even pay market value for free agents who would be upgrades at positions. It kind of has looked like the emphasis is going to be on culture over talent. Aside from the rookies, of course, we've got talent coming in that way, but the sellout to improve wasn't going to come yet. So my initial thought was, are you serious? And my second thought is, we see the league from different perspectives. You kind of see things from the scouting and the talent perspective, and I love those talent. But the 13th pick would be steep. That was my initial thoughts.
Yeah, that's fair. Honestly, I think the way that I saw it, yeah, you're right. We do look at it from different perspectives, and I hear where you're coming from. I feel like the 13th pick, when you're looking at that in particular as kind of the base of this trade, the major piece, to me, first of all, draft picks are always, they're not a guarantee, right? We don't know if the Texans are going to hit on that pick. They have, 6 first-round picks over the next 3 years. I would say the odds that we make all those selections aren't that high right off this bat. So potentially using that to get a, certified, maybe top 7, I would say the lowest you could go is top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. Like Deebo Samuel has proved that he's extremely productive, extremely versatile, can do wide receiver things, can do running back things. So I think at that 13th pick, it's going to be really tough to find a player who is better than Deebo Samuel. I know a lot of Texans fans are high on wide receivers in this draft, but do you see kind of any of those wide receivers in that 13 range? Do you think that they compare to Deebo Samuel?
I mean, they might, but they all have holes in their game, or they'd be going
Mm-hmm.
higher like Jamar Chase did last year. I do agree with you. The odds of finding a player who is better than him at 13 seems very unlikely. I would rather have him on our football team than any of the rookie wideouts. But for me, it's a conversation of the opportunity cost, because
Mm-hmm.
you're not just acquiring Deebo Samuel. One, you're trading away the first round contract. It's a great deal. It's supposed to be an elite player on a really team friendly salary. It goes 3 to 4 to 5 to $6 million like per year, at least in the top 10, I'm pretty sure. And then you have the 5 year option if you need it. So we'd be giving that up. And then the contract extension, with how things look right now, I think we would need to backload a lot of his money onto 2023 and 2024. And if we're paying Deebo Samuel, let's say we're paying him $25 million next year, would be fair for what I think he probably expects. That's a premier free agent that we're no longer able to sign. So I'm looking at the cost of, you're losing 2 players to go get him. And is he better than the 2 guys? Like, is a premier free agent going to want to come to Houston? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like they're taking away the flexibility. Or if on draft night, I don't know if you feel this way, but I could see a situation where Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett fall to 13, and we're able to trade with New Orleans or trade with Pittsburgh. So it feels like closing a lot of doors to go all in on Samuel.
Yeah, I would agree. It gives us less flexibility, versatility. But I think that's kind of a trade-off you take to get a guy who's so unique like Deebo. I mean, I'll pull up the kind of the stats I tweeted out earlier today, and then I want to talk about the cap point that you make, because I think that's a very interesting part of it. Deebo Samuel in 2021 put up just absurd numbers. So first of all, he played all 16 games. I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's injury prone. He has had some injuries, but he played 16 games in 2021 and he played 15 in 2019. He did miss some games in 2020 and he's had some college injuries, but I think injury prone is going a bit too far for him. But I mean, these stats are insane. 1,770 all-purpose yards, which would rank third amongst running backs and wide receivers. He was fifth in just purely receiving yards. And what I found interesting is he was only 24th in targets. Like, he really isn't like a big time, like you have to feed him the ball for him to be productive. Like, he's just super efficient like that. 14 total touchdowns. So that's including, I think he had 8 receiving and 6 rushing. And then super efficient numbers there, as you can see. So I wanted to bring that up first, just kind of talk about the caliber of talent that we're talking about here, which is what makes me be willing to kind of sacrifice some of that versatility, flexibility that you mentioned, because it's hard to find a guy like this. And then second off, to your point about the cap, like that's definitely a big talking point about this. But I think I kind of go back, I push back against it for 2 points. Number one, the Texans have so much future cap space. We've been opening up cap space the past 2 damn years. We've been making all of these moves to free ourselves up for 2023, 2024, 25, and beyond. And in 2024, we have 7 players under contract. In 2025, we have just 1 player under contract. So we know that this roster is barren. We know this is like the beginning stages of the rebuild. We have the financial flexibility to pay a guy like Deebo Samuel on top of paying another wide receiver like Brandon Cooks, who just inked his extension. I think the financial aspect of this is a bit overblown because we have the clear books, we have the open books, and we've seen time and time again, the salary cap can be manipulated very easily. So to me, you always are going to have to pay for talent, especially a guy like Deebo Samuel, who's so unique and productive. And he's the type of guy that I would want to take that bet on because of his talent and because of the flexibility that we already have. Does that make sense to you? Do you hear where I'm coming from?
No, I totally hear that. And I think he'd probably be worth every penny. Like, let's be honest, if we did trade the pick for him, he'd be worth the contract because he's a great player and you can manipulate the cap and his contract to work every year. But when I bring up the cap, what I was talking about is, would you rather have Deebo Samuel, or if you really need a wide receiver, would you rather have Deebo or Jameson Williams, and you get to pay a free agent next offseason $20 million per year? So you're going to get 2 guys. And that's a decision that's hard to make because we don't know if that rookie wide receiver is going to hit, and we don't know who's going to want to come here. At some point, we have to go all in on the flexibility, but part of it for me, I'm just having a hard time letting go of those first round assets. They've been the kind of the face of our rebuild for really the hope of it for the last year is we're going to get these first round picks for Deshaun Watson and we're going to find foundational pieces and hopefully go on to extend them. And we would be extending Deebo, but for a wide receiver too, like in my belief, and I don't know if you would disagree, our Vegas win total right now is 4.5 games. I do not think it would go higher than 5.5 games if we traded for Deebo Samuel. This team needs a lot of help. I don't think he's worth more than one win with the current surrounding cast in Houston. And you do need to go get elite difference makers like that. I just question if this is the time and the place because with the way that the NFL is evolving and this player movement, there's going to be another disgruntled wide receiver, I think, in the future that you can go get if you want. It looks like players are going to make it known if they're not happy. So the timing of it all is where I start to question.
You know, that's actually a really great point. That's a really great point because I was about to push back and say the timing may not seem right now, but because I do agree. I think Deebo is more of a guy who's like a finishing piece rather than someone who you're building your foundation around. He's not a quarterback. He's not a edge rusher, a tackle, something like that. And so it's interesting you mentioned like the landscape of the NFL has changed so much. Every off, it seems like every other week, one of these star players is asking out, and it's just shocking the world. Like 49ers fans are in shambles right now, from what I've seen. They did not see this coming whatsoever. So that is definitely an interesting point of view.
Jordan, conspiracy theory time. Do you think that it's a relationship thing for Deebo? Do you think he doesn't want to play running back? Do you think they lowballed him? Based on what you're reading, if you had to guess.
I think it's a mixture of all that. I don't think it's the relationship thing. I don't know his relationship with Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, but I would say it is mainly that I think this is mainly coming from his agent. And what his agent is trying to do is get him out of a scenario where they are turning him into more of a running back than a wide receiver. Because we've seen that running backs will deteriorate quicker than wide receivers, which means you're going to have less playing time in the NFL, which means you're going to be able to make less money in the NFL. So I think that's where this is coming from in terms of Deebo. He wants to go to a team where he's going to be utilized more as a wide receiver, which can extend his shelf life in the NFL. And that's really
paid.
To be. And get paid at the end of the day, because the Niners have shown year over year that, you know, they are willing to trade away an asset like DeForest Buckner when they traded him to the Colts and then draft their replacements. So, and I believe it was literally the 13th pick that they traded Buckner for to the Colts. And now they could potentially trade it to the Texans for the 13th pick. So that's interesting. There was something else I wanted to say that you mentioned. All right, you mentioned a few points ago. The whole thing about backtracking here, the whole thing about trading for Deebo Samuel will be kind of like giving away two players. I agree with you on like the 13. But I think in terms of like the free agent money that would be lost, I feel like we just have so much money that it wouldn't really, like, I don't think he's taking away, like, obviously he's taking away from the money that we have, but we still have so much that we still have stuff to pay. And I don't think I don't think free agents are lining up to the point where they're going to empty out our pockets is essentially what I want to say. But I do hear where you're coming from. Okay. So we talked about kind of the talent aspect of it. We talked about the cap aspect. Let's talk about the scheme aspect of it, and then we'll go into the compensation. So how do you see Deebo's fit with the Texans? Is it good? Is it bad?
I think he fits anywhere. Like we said, he's one of the top 10 receivers in the NFL. No one's disputing his talent. I think he's scheme proof. He's a freak athlete. He's strong. He's great at the catch point. He's a playmaker. He'd probably be the best football player on our team immediately. Scheme wise, I think Pep Hamilton could do it. He's never had access to a playmaker like Deebo. He didn't have one when he was when he was working with Justin Herbert, when he was with the Colts. I'm sure Andrew Luck dreams he had a playmaker. Deebo's T.Y. Hilton, I guess, was good, but I don't think he was ever.
They're just different players.
Exactly. So I think the scheme fit would be fine, but the question just becomes, so if Deebo is pushing for the trade because he doesn't want to get paid, he wants to be paid like an elite wide receiver, and he wants to play boundary receiver like that. how does his role change if he doesn't want to be used on these sweeps? And a lot of his versatility, you have to make the defense think, because he can come back into the backfield, or vice versa. If you have a linebacker that's covering him as a running back and he goes out wide, you're screwed. Or if you have a corner who's supposed to come into the box. So it's what is his value with this new role he's trying to outline for himself. But in terms of could we make it work, I'm sold. What do you
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think he's one of those players that's, yes, we've seen kind of a blueprint of success, but he's just so all around talented that you can use him in so many different ways. And I think the main thing is honestly just having him on the field is such a different threat that defenses haven't had to prepare for versus the Houston Texans, right? Even if he's not getting maybe the 20 carries a game, it wasn't 20, like 15 carries a game that he was getting for the Niners in the second half of the season in 2021, even if he's not getting that with the Texans, maybe he's getting like 3 to 5. It's mainly just the threat of defenses know, okay, he could get this handoff. We see him go in motion, jet motion across the backfield. Like, he could get the handoff. They have to prepare for that. It's something that they're going to have to game plan for every week, even if he's not getting all those touches as he was like in San Francisco. So I think that threat will still always be there. And I know this thought that we have that he's, yes, he's a great running back, but he's also will just be an absolutely great wide receiver is shared by a lot of, I guess, mainstream, whatever, big name media people. Benjamin Solak, I think, worded it really well. He was asked, like, which other coaches would you trust to deploy Deebo correctly? And he said all of them. Like, nobody will be able to use him as effectively as a running back as Shanahan did, but that's fine. Number one, because he doesn't want to really be a running back anymore. And number two, Ben says Deebo as a pure wide receiver is a 3-level threat, meaning he can run routes short, intermediate, and deep. Shanahan is best for him, but Deebo's good for everyone. So I think he's pretty like scheme proof, which is what we've been saying. And then Mike Clay tweeted out a nice little statistical breakdown here in 2021. Just kind of, this basically shows, the difference of using Deebo as a wide receiver and using him as a running back primarily. So weeks 1 through 8, he was primarily as a wide receiver, and he led the NFL in 113 scrimmage yards per game. Only had 6 carries compared to 80 targets in those first 8 weeks. Then they made him more of a running back, and his scrimmage yards per game actually went down a little bit. But he was still very, very effective. You know what I mean? Like, so I think this goes to show that he can do both. And there should be no concern about him wanting to switch back to becoming a full-time wide receiver. I think the film supports it and the stats support it as well.
Talent is what I'm worried about the least with any Deebo acquisition. Yeah. It's all about price point and cost of acquisition. I mean, he's a good football player, and good football players make plays. That was a great – Solak is so smart. I love reading his articles and his tweet. Dude just sees the game in a great way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Deebo would dominate the AFC South. I have no hesitation saying that.
100%. So what will we give up for Deebo? That's what we're going to get into now, talking about the compensation aspect for it. And Ben Albright just tweeted out, San Francisco setting the bar for opening offers at LOL, 0 chance anyone will trade that for Deebo. So essentially, we started this discussion with Tim from The Athletic and his proposal, and kind of just throwing out there that the 13th pick could be involved. And that seemed fine for like a 1-for-1. Like, I'd be happy for that. Like, I think if it was just purely the 13th pick for Deebo, yes, there's risks involved, but I would pull that trigger. But San Francisco has a good amount of leverage here, and they are not just going to give him away for cheap. We are not going to get a David Johnson and second-round pick type of trade for Deebo Samuel. What would you kind of hypothesize, John, would be the deal to get it done for Houston?
To get it done, I do think they probably want that 13th pick, because you don't draft Trey Lance if you don't intend to build around a rookie quarterback and a rookie contract. It's part of why them hanging on to Jimmy Garoppolo has been so confusing, because that money could have been spent elsewhere to prepare for that run. I think the Chargers are doing it better than anyone in the league right now in terms of building around Herbert being so cheap. So Deebo's supposed to be a guy who helps Lance kind of take his step forward into the league. Be familiar with the offensive system, be familiar with how you're going to win. I don't think they want to trade him. I do think it'll probably take the 13th pick. And maybe they ask – it's just hard because the 13th pick is so much more valuable than – I think the two data points we have are the Devontae Adams trade and the Tyreek Hill trade. The
Mhm.
Devontae Adams trade, pick 22 was the highlight, and they got a second round pick as well. And then for the Tyreek Hill trade, they got pick 29 and pick 50 and 3 other later selections. I think on a draft value chart that pick 13, I don't think pick 50 and 29 would add up to going up 16 spots. So it's a really valuable pick. And
Yeah.
I don't think Deebo has done as much in the league, nor is he as good as those other players. Like he's not Devontae Adams. He's not Tyreek Hill. Those are 2 of the 3 best receivers in the league. So I would have some hesitation thinking that they would think they can ask for more than that. But
Mhm.
the standard is a first round pick and more. Maybe that's the LOL. No one is trading them. He's like, I saw people saying the Jets should trade the 10th pick. And if I'm the Jets, there's no way I'm trading the 10th pick. And I feel similarly with if I'm the Texans, I'm not trading the 13th pick unless compensation's coming back.
Okay, so you'd say maybe the 13th pick for Deebo and what, like a day 3 pick?
Probably a day 3 pick, late day 2 pick, maybe in the future, not this year. But
Okay.
I'm uncomfortable with the price point because I don't like, and I'm adjusting because the league is evolving. I think wide receivers are more valuable now and more important towards winning than they've ever been. And you're going to have to pay for them like you pay for other premier positions. But for a wide receiver, I'm having a tough time with that. What do you think? Do you think the 13th pick would get it done?
It's so hard to say because we don't have like a tangible, this is the list of teams Deebo wants to go to. This is the list of teams that the 49ers are willing to deal with. Like it's not like the Deshaun Watson thing. It hasn't been that developed yet. So I don't know who we're like competing with per se, but I would imagine that I don't know that the Jets, like, I don't think that the Jets would put the 10th pick on the board. I think that they would put their 2 second rounders.
Yeah.
And the 13th pick is a lot more valuable than those 2 second round picks that the Jets hold, which I think are like 35 and 38 or something like that.
See, I would offer like a scatter of day 2 picks. I don't think they'd want that. Like I would say you can have a 2 and a 3 this year and a 2 next year.
Mhm.
Kind of like the Carson Wentz trade. But yeah, the 10th pick. No.
Yeah, what I think we could do, everyone's talking about the 13th pick because of that report that by Tim. But I think what could be more enticing on the Texans' point of this is giving up potentially one of those future Cleveland Brown picks because we don't know where they're going to land, but it is more likely that they land lower than 13. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. The problem is though, we don't know what year Deshaun's going to be suspended for. And
Yeah.
that's the pick that I would want. That's the pick I'm not trading.
Okay.
But yeah, if he plays, I agree. It's
Mhm.
probably a pick outside the top 20.
Yeah, so I guess like the 2023 pick would probably be the year where Watson gets suspended. Like he'll probably get suspended for this upcoming season rather than the next one. So maybe giving him that 2024 pick, that's probably like the lowest one, where it would convey is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, this is also another interesting part of it is the age factor. Like you mentioned, the other kind of blockbuster wide receiver trades Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. Tyreek Hill's 28 compared to Deebo being 26. And 26 years old, he's only also had 3 years in the league. So age is like a valuable data point, but also like touches, snaps, that sort of stuff. Like 26 is usually you spend some more time in the league if you're 26-year old, but he's only spent 3 seasons, and one of those was lost due to, or half of that was lost due to injury. So I think there's not that much worry for me in terms of, oh, you're getting this guy, and maybe we're not going to be able to really compete for another 2 years, and he'll be 28, like stuff like that. Like I think I'm still fine with Deebo at that age. I think he's still going to be a guy who can perform pretty well, like into his early 30s, I would say. So are you worried about the age factor? Do you think that's just a bit too old, or where do you stand on that, John?
In terms of how I would view it if I'm Houston, no, I'm not worried. I think that he'll still be a pretty valuable player by the time. I mean, you and I have both said this when we've talked before. A rebuild should not last longer than 2 years. That should be the plan. After this, so this is going to be year 2. And after next offseason, I think Houston's going to be gunning for a playoff spot. That's going to be their goal.
Yeah.
And he'll be there for that. And they won't really be contenders probably until the year after. But 28 years old, that's the height of your prime probably in NFL terms. I would push back on the age thing if San Francisco tried to tell us that his age makes him more valuable than the two guys who were just traded, because 2 years is a minimal difference compared to, I don't think it compensates for the lack of proven production that we've seen.
That's fair. That's fair. That's a good point. I actually want to answer this quickly from Primetime Vari. He says, should the 49ers be satisfied with just one first? We're talking about the trade compensation. Should they be satisfied with just one first? It's hard to say, because when you're in this position where you have to deal a player, and it doesn't seem like, I mean, maybe do you think, okay, I guess, do you think, you asked me where I think this trade request is coming from. I guess I need to ask you as well. Do you think this is more smoke and Deebo's just trying to push his leverage and get paid? Because I feel like that's kind of a big talking point in this, in terms of what the compensation that the 49ers can really get.
Apparently he and Kyle Shanahan have a really good relationship, so I imagine he would like to stay if they pay him, but I bet there was some very, not super disrespectful, but I bet they lowballed him partially on the premise that they played him like a running back.
Yeah.
So you see all these reports, he does not want to be a running back and he wants a good contract. In terms of if should they be satisfied, I can't remember a wide receiver just in terms of, I'm going to go back to the draft value chart. The 13th pick is, I mean, Stephon Diggs, I think, went for the 20th pick,
Yep.
fifth rounder a few years ago. We just saw Devontae Adams and Tyreek go for 22 and 29. I think that'd be pretty phenomenal value for San Francisco, especially, I think, didn't they draft him outside the top 50?
I think it was a third rounder or maybe a second rounder. I think it was like the 55th pick or something like that. Let me see. Draft pick. He was, never mind, he was a 36th overall pick, so early second round.
Oh, early too. But still, though, I mean, if you get that early one, you might get the second. I mean, right now, I think the Jets at 10 and the Commanders at 11 are going to take wide receivers. I don't know how you feel like when you do your mock drafts, but you probably get the third wide receiver on the board. That's probably, you could get a Drake London, a Chris Olave for 1/10, 1/5 the cost of Deebo. I think that would be a win for them, especially once the trade request goes public. Like you said, it's a time bomb.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is an interesting thing. Nathan Gurecki says teams now know that Deebo wants out, so I doubt they get as much as they want for him. It's tough, man, with this leverage battle. It really is. Does anyone know if Deebo Samuel has a no trade clause, man? Because that would be, oh man.
He's on a rookie deal, so he can either sit out and so he's on a second round contract, so I bet he's due 4 or 5 this year, and he either won't get paid and he won't accrue a year of service, and he'll definitely get traded if he sits out. Versus, I don't think he has any say, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah,
there isn't a lot at stake for him to lose either compared to the future earnings if he can secure the trade.
Yeah, I think he's in a tough situation. So man, I'm really interested to see how this turns out. My boy Ruben's here. What's up? He said he's all for Deebo Samuel. Let's go. Honestly, the main thing that I'm looking at this through is just the pure talent on the field acquisition, and just like how much fun it would be to have a player like Deebo Samuel in the Texans. Like, genuinely such an entertaining player to watch, and a guy that you can kind of morph your offense around. And I think he would be a big help to Davis Mills. He'd be a good fit for Pep Hamilton and the quick game offense that he wants. Like, we're going to see a lot of screens and trying to get the ball out quickly to our guys and get yak. And there's no one better than Deebo Samuel at doing that. So I think he'd be a big help. Like, you talked about how Deebo's supposed to help Trey Lance. Like, he's going to help Davis Mills just pick up easy yardage, whether it's on screens, whether it's over the middle of the field where he makes his bread and butter. Like, it would be really, really fun, man. I don't know if it's likely. Like, I guess this is where I want to end on this part, and then we'll get into some more draft discussions. What would you put the odds at that the Texans would actually make this trade for Deebo Samuel?
Like, I have a question for you after this.
Yeah.
I would say less than 10%. You?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think at least at the stage that we're at right now, where we're going off of pretty much just one reporter and saying that he's heard chatter that the Houston Texans are interested. Yeah, 10%, maybe. I'll bump it up a little bit. I'll say there's like a 30% chance. I think Nick really values Deebo. And
off what? What makes you think that?
I think he's seen, I would hope that he's learned kind of from his New England time and seeing that the wide receiver position is so like, how do I explain this? You need playmakers at the end of the day. You need playmakers. And I think he got a lot of decisions, maybe not he, but they got a lot of decisions in the wide receiver aspect wrong. And it kind of set them back a little bit. And so I think now he might be valuing that position a little bit more, as we see with the extension to Brandon Cooks, as we saw with drafting Nico Collins last year, as we see with they've been very interested in the top group of wide receivers, bringing in Treylon Burks, bringing in Jameson Williams. So I think he's finding this new value for the wide receiver position, and Deebo is just like a unicorn. So I think he will be enticed by that.
It just would take I agree, and I think he's learned, and we saw he paid Brandon Cooks when some around the league would have said that they did not need to pay Brandon Cooks. You have to have wide receiver talent to win, but it would go against the timeline of the rebuild, their philosophy up to now. They've been cheap. So that's my biggest thing. And the Niners have to be willing to trade him. And the other thing, he may not have a no trade clause, but if Deebo won't sign an extension for the moment the trade is agreed upon, then they're not making the trade. So he kind of has a no trade clause in that way.
Yeah, two things to that. I think I would say like you talked a lot about kind of their plan so far, Nick being cheap. And I think it's definitely fair to say he's cheap in terms of cheap and maybe conservative in terms of free agency. That's always how he's been. It's always how the Patriots have been. That's his philosophy. I don't really expect that to change. But I feel like at some point you do have to acquire talent. And I think what we've seen is he'll be a little bit more aggressive and willing to pay a little bit more in terms of trades, in terms of giving up draft picks. He's made so many trades, whether it's for guys who are supposed to be starters like Marcus Cannon, whether it was for Shaq Lawson, or whether it was for like later round draft picks in day 3. He's really been willing to kind of give up picks and show that he would rather get proven commodities. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. And then you mentioned something for you.
Question for you before we transition off Deebo. You're the draft guru between the two of us. Let's say we trade the 13th pick. Who are you taking at 3 and 37? And does that change the equation for you, what you want to do at the top?
My initial thought was it does, and I would want to kind of fully invest around Deebo and get him a run blocking offensive lineman like Evan Neal or Ike Mekwonu. But now that we see that his main point of wanting to leave San Fran is to be more of a true wide receiver than a wide receiver / running back, now I kind of go back on that and think, okay, well, if we're not going to give him 15 touches a game in terms of rushing, then we don't really need to invest that third pick in Evan Neal or Ike Mekwonu. So for me, it doesn't really change. It's at 3. I think you'd still go the best player available, whichever defender really falls in your lap there. And then at 37, 37, it would change it because for me, that was a prime area to take a wide receiver. I think I have 7 wide receivers with a second round grade. And so that's really the area that you want to target that position to get the most value. So now we wouldn't have to do that. And it would free us up to maybe get a corner, maybe get an offensive lineman, really wherever you want to go. So that's kind of how it would change for me. How would it change for you?
You have the same thought. I think I would want to invest in the offensive line early, though, or I would feel better about it because right now I'm thoroughly in the Kayvon or Sauce or Kyle Hamilton camp. Love that comment. But if you did that, I might want to make sure we have a little more time to throw. And you can't. Evan Neal and Ike Mekwonu both look like very high floor, high ceiling guys. And then at 37, I would definitely be going defensive back because the corner value at that pick is going to be crazy.
And that's what we'll get into now. Jason Chukwu says still taking Sauce, and we'll transition to that because I believe it was Dane Brugler reported today that he would predict that Houston selects Sauce Gardner at 3, the cornerback out of Cincinnati. He's a fan favorite. He's got one of the best names in the game. He's got a great resume, all the athletic and physical traits that you could want. How would you feel about Sauce at 3, John?
I think I'd like it. I have some hesitation about him and his side. There are holes in his game. He's not perfect. He probably isn't Jalen Ramsey.
Mhm.
He's probably closer. I don't even know if he's Denzel Ward, but he's Sauce Gardner. He's a great in coverage. He's an absolute technician. It's beautiful cornerback play. I think you need a good corner in today's NFL, just someone that you can really trust on the boundary. He's a willing tackler, so I could get over concerns about, the corners need to tackle in Lovey's system, but he's willing to go at it. I would have to hope that it's something he's going to get better at with his angles and his technique as he plays at the NFL level. And there's so much corner depth in this class, but when you get the chance to bring Sauce in, and he's an attitude setter, he's he can define your defense in terms of some swagger and attitude there. I think I'd be excited. What
Yeah.
about you?
I would be all for it too. I think he's one of the safer players in this class because of his proven resume and everything that you've mentioned. My only thing is I guess I'm being picky here and I'm splitting hairs here is I think you could potentially no, actually, I've always been thinking that, trade down to 8 or trade down to 5 or something like that and then go get him. But I
I don't
think,
think he's getting past the Jets if you
yeah,
do that.
that's what I was about to say. I think the Jets at 4 is probably the lowest he could go. So you probably have to take him at 3. And I think I'd be pretty happy with that. It would hurt me a little bit to not get Kayvon or to get Kyle Hamilton, but I think Gardner can give us that lockdown cornerback one that J.C. Jackson, Stephon Gilmore, that type of guy that Nick has really had a lot of success with in building out rosters. So I'd be for it. He's met with the Texans 3 times, I believe. So he's definitely at the top of their list, right up there with some other guys. And one of our favorites, Kyle Hamilton, is in town. He's in NRG. Thank the Lord. They're meeting with him. They're
Made for
figuring out
days
what
like
the
this.
hell. Sorry, they're figuring out what the hell happened with his 40-yard dash. And they're getting to learn about the god that is Kyle Hamilton. Now, John, has your thoughts on him kind of changed in terms of selecting him at 3?
Probably a little bit, but it's not
Mhm.
because I think less of him as a prospect. It's just that the draft is an exercise in finding value.
Yep.
If you can take a player at 60, you're not going to take him at 20. And what's kind of coming, that's a drastic example, but something coming in is if you think Hamilton's going to fall outside the top 10, which right now I think it sounds extremely likely that he would
Yeah.
fall out of the top 10. I see this comment, Sauce at 3 and Kyle Hamilton at 13. Would you all do it? Yes. If you can get Kyle Hamilton at 3, that's okay. But if you can get him at 13, that's the best pick of the first round. So my thoughts are only changing because I see an avenue where you can get 2 elite guys and end up with him.
Yeah.
Would you take the chance that he falls?
I think you kind of have to at this point. I think you framed this perfectly in terms of the draft being an exercise and finding the right value. It's always about value. It's always about trying to take the best player available, especially when you're in the Texans position. Such an early stage in the rebuild, barren roster, like just get the best player available at the right value. And so I think Sauce or even Kayvon at 3, I'd be very happy with. And then you're praying that a guy like Kyle Hamilton can fall there, or maybe it's someone else, maybe Stingley. They've been doing a lot of homework on him. Maybe it's Jermaine Johnson. I think I keep going back to this thought that the Texans are in such a great position that it's going to be hard to, be upset with whoever they end up picking. And that's the great part about having 2 first-round picks. And to circle back to the Deebo Samuel thing, man. Oh, you're right, John. You're right. It's so exciting to have these 2 first-round picks. The possibilities, man. Oh,
I want these rookies and I want them bad. I mean, you and I might need to form a support group if they don't end up drafting Kyle Hamilton. It's going to be hours of our lives in mental space taken up thinking about this Notre Dame safety. But yeah, they really can't go wrong. And I do think he can make it to 13. And so we're going to have probably 3 tackles: Aquonu, Neal, Cross, 4 edges. I think Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Jermaine Johnson. And then you need the 2 corners to go, 2 wideouts, and a quarterback, and you're there.
Exactly. So this is the draft order. Let's you want to hypothesize kind of 1 to 13 and see, is it realistic that Kyle Hamilton can fall?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Jacksonville. It seems like there's just so many freaking reports, and I'm gonna have Lori Fitzpatrick on the pod tomorrow, and we'll get her thoughts kind of on who Jacksonville is really leaning, because there's so much noise. Is it Aiden Hutchinson? Is it still Ikem Ekwonu or Evan Neal? Is it Trevon Franklin Walker going number one? A lot of smoke. Where I think they end up going is still Aiden Hutchinson. What about you, John?
Yeah, I keep coming back to that. I did sprinkle a little money on Trayvon Walker to be the first pick because the value was there. But yeah, I think Aiden Hutchinson's going to be the first pick. I mean, Trent Baalke's job is on the line. He cannot screw this up. It's either I think him, and this can lead into Detroit. I think him and Kayvon, after all this speculation, are still going to end up going first and second overall together.
So I think so.
I think Kayvon could go number one. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So there's been recent reports out of Detroit saying that Dan Campbell and their team over there does not like Kayvon Thibodeau's work ethic and all of that stuff. Now, is that more smoke, or is it, okay, there's all this smoke, it must be some sort of fire? Who freaking knows, man, because it's rumor season, it's smokescreen season. I have no idea what to believe, but that has kind of been my thought from the beginning since those Kayvon Thibodeau rumors came out, is if there's any coach that doesn't like that, it is definitely ankle biting Dan Campbell.
Well, if it's not him, I still think it's an edge. I think Trayvon Walker will be the guy there.
I agree. Okay, so let's pencil in Aiden Hutchinson at one. You know what? Should we just do this in like a mock draft format? It'll be easier, huh?
Is there a platform that lets us pick for every team?
Yes, sir. Sir. Let's do this. Be easier to visualize because I know I have short-term memory issues.
I was having to write it down, so.
Perfect. Okay, so Jags, let's say they take Hutchinson, and then I agree. I think it's very possible that Walker goes too. I think there's a lot of hype behind him right now. So at 3, we're saying Sauce. Sauce is the move.
Sauce, yes. Sauce it up.
The move. I'd be happy with that. Then at 4, this is a tough spot, but I feel like Kayvon, I think they would love to have Sauce, like we just said. But I think Kayvon makes a lot of sense for the New York Jets at 4.
Mm-hmm.
You agree?
I agree.
I think they could go O-line, but I think Kayvon makes too much sense for Robert Saleh. Now at 5, the Giants, I feel like they just need to take the best offensive lineman available, whether they believe that's Ikem Ekwonu or Evan Neal. Who knows?
I think they need a true tackle, and I think Neal is the best pure left tackle on the board.
I think so too. I think he would pair very well with Andrew Thomas at their right tackle spot, and you have your tackle duo for whoever the hell the quarterback is. Probably not Danny Dimes, but we'll see. 6, man. Is this just easy as it seems? Is it Malik Willis for the Carolina Panthers?
The friends that I made during the Watson trade saga, my people in Carolina, they think that Jimmy Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield will be the quarterback within a 2 weeks time frame. So I would personally put Ike Ekwonu here.
Ekwonu, okay.
Yeah, I think Ekwonu comes in. He's exactly what they need for that Carolina line, and they'll bring in a veteran stopgap who can help them win immediately. Because, Carolina's a bad team with a bad coach, but the roster's great. They should be winning games, and I think that he's kind of the finishing piece on, hey, Matt Rule, our offense is ready to make it work. Would you disagree?
No, I think you're right. I think they might go the Baker Mayfield route or some other veteran quarterback, and then wait till 2023 when they have a better core to support that quarterback. I'm a big believer in, build the house first before you get your quarterback. So build the line, build the weapons and whatnot. So we are going to slot Ikem Ekwonu to the Panthers at 6. Now, as we make our way to 13 for the Texans, our next stop is the New York Giants at 7. Oh, man. See, this is where I feel like Kyle Hamilton could go. I think they could go edge as well, or maybe even Stingley, because I know
this is where I've been penciling in Jermaine Johnson. I think he has too much noise, within 10 to 15. When every team that's picking between 11 and 15 wants a guy, they usually go higher. When everyone talks about a guy getting him in the early second, and that kind of tells you, oh, he's going to be a first-round pick. Jermaine Johnson feels like, especially looking at his player profile, someone who the NFL might be higher on than the scouting community that is the media.
Yeah, I think his evaluation will really come down to, the interviews and going through his story of going through JUCO, going to Georgia, then transferring to FSU, and just trying to get his perspective on that and why he did that. I think that'll make or break it. But I do believe, top 10 makes sense for him. 7, is probably as high as I can see him going, but I don't hate it because I am very high on him. So he's going to be the guy to the Giants at 7. Now the Falcons at 8. Another Kyle Hamilton spot, in my opinion, just in terms of pure best player available. But I think Charles Cross could also be very interesting to them. Malik Willis at 8. That still makes a lot of sense to me. One of these wide receivers, Stingley even too. Where do you think the Falcons go with this?
Someone who's lived in Atlanta a long time, whenever you think the Falcons need to address a foundational need, they take a wideout. They take Kyle Pitts. They take Julio Jones. They take Calvin Ridley. It would be very Atlanta for them to go. I could see Garrett Wilson here. I could see Jamison Williams. And I also think Derek Stingley to take an SEC corner and try to build a duo around AJ Terrell and Stingley. Those would probably be this. I agree with you that this is the crux point. If Hamilton makes it past pick 8, I feel very confident about him not going 9, 10, or 11.
Yeah, I think it's definitely between 8 and 9, these next two. But I agree with you. I think, with their wide receiver room being as barren as it is, it would be a lot of fun to pair up a guy like Garrett Wilson with Kyle Pitts and then, push off quarterback till 2023. And then, boom, you've already got 2 established weapons right there. They need help on offense, and I think Garrett Wilson's a perfect fit for them. So that's going to be the pick for the Falcons at 8. Now we got the Seahawks at 9. See, this could be a really fun Kyle Hamilton spot because he's versatile, can play with Quandre Diggs back there.
They've got what happened to Jamal Adams they're paying Quandre top 10 safety money. They're paying Jamal Adams top 3 safety money. I don't think this is I think this is Charles Cross or a quarterback.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I think I view Adams a little bit differently. I think I view him more as like kind of a linebacker than a safety. And I feel like having those 3 kind of different skill sets would be really fun for the Seahawks, but that's a little bit more of like a Madden situation. I would agree with. Charles Cross, yeah, that makes sense. They have needed an offensive line for forever. Dwayne Brown's only getting older. I don't even know if they have re-signed him actually, but yeah, let's pencil in Charles Cross to the Seahawks.
Can I talk about my conspiracy theory at pick 9?
Yeah,
it is Desmond Ridder at pick 9.
Oh God,
would be very Seattle.
Oh God,
tell me what organization more than anyone in the league takes early second round guys, and they take him in the first. He's a Pete Carroll quarterback. He's a game manager, well built, good decision maker. They could win quickly with. That would be my if there's going to be a shock in the draft, I think it would be at 9. I don't know if it'll be him, but Seattle always does something funky.
They always pull a rabbit out of the hat. That is for sure. I think Ridder would be really interesting. I think, they've hyped up Drew Lock and they've said they're higher on him, but I just can't see that, man. I just can't. Nothing about Drew Lock gives me confidence.
He's terrible. He started a whole season. He had that one game against the Texans that lost us home field advantage. Thank you, Drew Lock. And then he has been terrible for the rest of his career. So
yeah, it's just been downhill, but we'll see. I think Charles Cross would definitely be the pick to go because as a team that is very much in a similar position like the Texans, just build the trenches out. Just build that foundation. Now with the Jets at 10, I think they're in a perfect spot to take Derek Stingley. And they come out of here with a haul, getting Kayvon Thibodeau and Derek Stingley. We talked a lot about them potentially wanting Sauce at 4. Well, next best option for them might very well be Stingley. So I'm not even going to let you speak, John. That's the pick for the Jets at 10.
Okay. Wilson gets no receivers. All the receiver noise there's. But that's fine because we need 2 receivers off in the top 12, and I think that the Commanders kind of need to make the Carson Wentz move work. They've got 2 great running backs that they like. I think adding a receiver to be opposite of Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel is more of a gadget guy. Either Drake London or Jamison Williams here would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I agree with you, and I'm trying to figure out who would be the best. Like, who do they think would be the best fit for them to pair with Terry McLaurin? I feel like McLaurin gives you the speed, the route runner type of guy that you can move around. So I feel like they would kind of want Drake London to complement him. You got the big body, contested catch guy, red zone threat. You can also be a power slot. Would you agree? You think that's a move?
Yeah, I think he is. And I think NFL types are going to be higher on London than the media is because a year ago they were talking about London like a top 5 pick. Um, I think London could go. He kind of feels like the forgotten guy of the five because he wins in the least sexy way. I don't know if you would agree with that, but like Olave, Wilson, Williams, um, they all win with their speed and flash, and Drake
Mhm.
London just kind of grown man's people.
Yeah, it's just bully ball, man. It really is. It's fun to watch, but it's not as flashy. I would agree. Okay, we are almost at the Texans pick, man. The Vikings at 12, and I don't like seeing that their top need is a safety. Do you think there's a different direction that they could go? I think
I
like
think. Oh, sorry, you
no,
go
I
ahead.
think Jordan Davis makes a lot of sense for
Mhm.
them, or Devontae Wyatt, either of those DTs. Building out the O line, like they've done a pretty decent job of that, but I think they could still use more help there. We know they like to go corners. They'd like to invest in their corners. Sorry. Ah, man, this they could really go anywhere here. Tyler Linderbaum makes so much sense for their scheme and what they want to do with Dalvin Cook and their zone scheme. Where do you see the Vikings going at 12?
I think if this happened in real life, this is where we'd see a trade.
Okay.
I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are right there at 20. I think their infatuation for Malik Willis is very, very public. If he made it this far, and there's kind of a framework for what that would look like too. I think Chicago made the same jump from 20 to 12 last year with the New York Giants to go get Justin Fields. So in my head, this kind of could be anyone that wants Willis could come up, whether that's the Saints, the Steelers, or even someone lower down the totem pole.
Okay, I like that idea a lot, John. Honestly, and since you mentioned, I think numerous teams could do that move, and I agree with you. Let's just keep the Vikings picking here for now, and we'll say, this is a trade up spot for Malik Willis. He finally goes off the board, and that leaves the Houston Texans at 13. We did it. We made the math work. Kyle Hamilton is available, and I think this is a very realistic and not far fetched scenario whatsoever, in my opinion. I think all these teams would honestly be pretty happy with these picks.
Yeah.
So it's this easy, huh? Just Kyle Hamilton at 13, man.
Question for you: if this
Yeah.
is how the board fell, how confident are you that Nick Caserio would pick Kyle Hamilton at 13 over these other players?
I think
Over
it'd still be a
James?
I think it'd still be a toss up, honestly.
Yeah.
I looking back at it, like he has had some safeties in the past where he's seen like the value, like a guy like Devin McCourty with the Patriots. And Nick has always liked to build back to front. So I want to believe that he would value a guy like Kyle Hamilton and his versatility to play all throughout the secondary and even some linebacker. But I just don't know, man. I just don't know if it's the right move because we went Sauce at 3, right? So I would assume
Yeah.
that whoops, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. I would assume that they also want to get a trenches guy, whether that's O-line or D-line. So I think Jordan Davis could be very intriguing. I think Zion Johnson and George Karlaftis could also be intriguing. And then, of course, Kyle Hamilton. So it'd be those 4. What do you think? What would you put the odds at?
I think he would have to be the highest graded player on their board. Like the
Yeah.
other guys we're talking about just did not play as well in college as him. They're not 6'4", 230-pound safeties.
Yeah.
But it kind of gives me the sinking feeling in my stomach from, I don't know if you were a Teddy Bridgewater guy in 2014, but when it got to pick 31 and the Texans had pick 33, and it was like, oh my God, like Teddy Bridgewater is like going to be a Texan, like if they make, and then he just wasn't.
Yeah.
So my stomach would still kind of be turning, but I'd like to think they take him. And I mean, think about the ad campaigns they could, we'd see some funny, like no fly zone stuff with Kyle Hamilton and Sauce. I hope they would do it.
Dude, Legion of Boom 2.0. Let's
Yes.
see it happen. So there is our top 13 at the moment. As of what? We're a week out from the draft, man. God
Mhm.
damn. We're going Jacksonville with Hutchinson, Detroit with Travon Walker, the Texans with Ahmad Gardner, the Jets with Kayvon Thibodeau, the Giants with Evan Neal, the Panthers with Ike Ekwonu, the Giants again with Jermaine Johnson, the Falcons with Garrett Wilson, the Seahawks with Charles Cross, the Jets with Stingley, the Washington Commanders with Drake London, X team trades up to 12 for Malik Willis. Maybe it's the Steelers. That's probably the most likely team there. And then boom, the Texans get Kyle Hamilton, man. What would you, if that is our haul, what would you give it, 1 to 10?
I'd be so excited. I mean, it probably doesn't make the most football sense. Like, I would like to address the trenches too, but there's great offensive line depth on day 2. I'd be freaking out. They're probably 2 of my 3 favorite guys in the first round. I would love it.
I'd be very ecstatic too. I give it a 10 out of 10. I think going off of that, like you said, like we'll still have 9 picks to address the O-line and D-line. Like, I think moves can be made. It'll work itself out. I think at the top of the second, guys I would prioritize are, Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State in terms of an edge, in terms of a, left guard. Maybe Kenyon Green falls. Maybe you have to trade up. I would trade up a little bit into the end of the first, give up a 6th. Maybe it's a 4th you have to give up, something like that to get there.
I mean, it depends on how many spots, but
Yeah.
I give up as much as like probably even pick 80 if Kenyon Green's on the board or Zion Johnson's still on the board, you can just go ahead and, oh, hey, we got the sexy defensive backs and we took care of the offensive line.
Yeah.
It would be really hard to say no to.
I agree with you for Zion. I agree. I think he's that talented. But man, that was a fun practice. And I guess I want to kind of finish this off. Do we hit everything? We hit everything.
I think we did. We talked about Sauce. We talked about Hamilton. We talked way too much about Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, just to wrap it up, I guess I'll say if you guys want to catch our Deebo discussion, because that is kind of the main topic of this stream, definitely go rewind it. We spent the first probably 25 to half an hour discussing it. So check that out. If you missed the show, it will also be going live on YouTube. Or sorry, not live. It'll be up on YouTube. It'll be the audio version will be on Apple and Spotify podcast for the Believe in Texans. That's BLEAV, as you see on the screen. Yeah, that's really it, man. You guys like the video, subscribe if you haven't. We're on the road to 6,000 subscribers. And sorry, yes, John, go for it.
Oh, also, please give us a follow at the Texans Wire. You can follow me at John H. Crumpler. I'm at $15.99 if any of you guys want to push me to $1,600. And Jordan, thank you for having me on.
Thank you, John. I was just about to hand it over to you, but that's perfect segue to end this off. Yes, follow my boy John H. Crumpler on Twitter. He's very deserving of it. And we'll see more from us in the future, 100%. I think that's really all I got for y'all. That'll do it for the show. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And remember, the film don't lie.